I've been very lucky to have a sneak preview of what's in the prospectus, and it is looking really, really interesting, and it's just looking to see how that gets delivered now and where we go from here. So, in order to discuss that, I've been joined today by Tom Venables from Priory Partners and Stephen Haynes from the City Council. So, I'd like to both just introduce yourself, check the microphones are working out.
Hi everyone, I'm Tom Venables, I'm a planner with Priory Partners. Proud to be from Southampton as well. I know we were talking a bit about Pride yesterday. I've always been proud to come from the South. I've been away for 20 years and I've just moved back down this way, so it's great to have been part of this really exciting project.
Hi everyone, I'm Stephen Haynes. I'm the Executive Director for Growth and Prosperity at Southampton City Council. I've been here just over 2 months now and loving it. And just to say, I'm really happy to force myself to sort of not break out into a sort of duet with you. Sort of like 90s take that duet. Anyway, so just forgive me if I do that. Thanks.
Who knows, that might be more interesting, but we'll carry on anyway. So, Stephen, obviously you just joined from Hackney. What attracted you to Southampton?
So, I was at Hackney for 9 years and loved it up there. Did lots of important stuff, got lots done, but I was looking, I wanted to sort of test myself somewhere else, and I wanted to work in the city. Because if you love place shaping and changing communities and making life better for people, I think sort of cities, away from London probably, is where it's at. And when I was talking to Andrew, the Chief Executive, and Councillor Field and others as part of the sort of coming down and sort of potentially joining process, I talked a lot about opportunity, and I talked a lot about the incredible potential this city has. I have to say, having been here on the ground, as it were, for 2 and a bit months, that opportunity and that potential is amplified to the nth degree. It's an incredible place with, as I say, incredible opportunity. So that's the short answer, Gavin. I suppose more widely, what do I mean by that? I suppose what I mean is that if you want to do the stuff that we want to do, then having a global port, the busiest cruise terminal in Europe, third biggest container port, having a fantastic hospital, an amazing teaching hospital in place, having 2 internationally renowned universities, having all the incredible partnership arrangements that are in place, including Chamber of Commerce, Southampton Forward, Go Southampton, all that sort of stuff, and of course having a Premier League football club, and they will remain a Premier League football club. I'm very confident. I always have to say, it's not quite sure why. Every time I'm here, I have to admit that I'm a West Ham fan. But anyway, there we go. Thanks, mate. I'll pay you later for that one. So that's really important. That infrastructure, those institutions, those anchor institutions are absolutely critical. But it's not just institutions. I think this is the important bit. It's the people behind them. So across all those partners I mentioned, every leader, every team that I've met is up for this, and they're excited about the possibilities. I'm also fortunate that I have a leader of the council, Councillor Philcott, Cabinet Member, Councillor Bogle, and the rest of the council who are pushing this really, really hard. So, yeah, that's why I came down, Gavin.
Brilliant. No, that's very good, and it's good to have someone with such appetite for change and ambition as well, so that's great. Now, about 20 years ago, when I was just recently joined Southampton and working at the City Council, I actually met Tom for the first time, I think, when Tom was at Cardiff University, where I just graduated. And Tom was interviewing me about regeneration plans for the city, which had just been published. So many of you will recall the master plan was published about 10 years ago, and the City Centre Urban Design Strategy by Igor back in about 2001, I think it was. So there have been plans before. So I suppose the question is what makes this different. But before we get on to that, do you think things have changed in the period up until now?
Certainly, and I remember very well, I ended up working for Igor on the back of researching the work they did in Southampton, and it was so visionary and inspiring. And I think when I was growing up here, it was obviously, the 90s and early noughties was actually a period of kind of immense growth and development in the city. So it's certainly changed in that period. And with places like West Quay opening up, and I think more recently the kind of the later phase of West Quay is actually really successful. So there's lots of pockets of greatness, I think, in Southampton. But a lot of that vision that was in that original Edor plan is still yet to be realised. So particularly, things like the Mayflower waterfront and what could happen around there, as part of a world-class waterfront. And I think, and as I said in the last session, things like the deprivation haven't gone away. So there's a lot that has been a vision for a long time that is still to be implemented. And I think the other interesting thing is, perhaps from a resiliency perspective, a lot of the buildings that were put up, 25, 30 years ago were only built for 25, 30 years. And so that gives us today's opportunity. It's a little bit sad to see the end of Leisure World and Icon and Diva, as I remember it. But it's also a kind of a new beginning for Southampton. And I think that's what's been really exciting about this brief. And actually the term Renaissance, it is a genuine turning point for the city, and you really feel that kind of passion and and shared purpose in the discussions that we've been having with the new Renaissance board and the various main stakeholders in the city.
And Gavin, sorry, just before you come back in, can I just add to that? And Tom touched on it. We're obviously talking a lot at the moment about the prospectus and master plan and city centre. For me, Renaissance goes well beyond the city centre. It's about our district centres. It's about communities outside the middle of the city. I've been on a programme of ward visits with the local councillors and just seeing what's out there, the challenges, but also those opportunities outside the immediate environment we're talking about is really important. And I think collectively it's important that we remember that. We've got big ambitions around state renewal and regeneration out there. So we see this as a catalyst for a much wider sort of approach as well.
Perfect. And I think that's true that those previous plans were very city centre focused. And we are obviously in the city centre today, and some of that catalyst for change will come from the city centre, but it will spread out. But we need to remember those wider estates as well. It's interesting actually when you sit here, and about 20 years ago the stadium was just recently built, moved down from Archers Road, and I think at the time everyone thought it's going to be a catalyst for the Itchen waterfront. These things take time. ABP was looking at different bay around the same time. ABP's plans, they need to expand. And I think that that's where things like the Renaissance board that have been set up, bringing partners together, actually can create a bit of a catalyst that we haven't had in the past. So, Stephen, do you want to just tell us a little bit about the Renaissance board and its role and why and how it's set up?
Yeah, thanks, Gavin. So, the Renaissance board was established last year. That was into March 2023. It was chaired and still is by the then leader of the council, Councillor Court, who is, of course, now the test and a huge advocate for the city, along with Darren, the other MP as well. The point around the Renaissance board is that it would bring together all the partners that I mentioned earlier and others who share the same vision and commitment to the city. Critically, it also includes the partners who are freehold owners of assets and parts of the city as well. So the intention was very much about it being a place where issues and visions were discussed and agreed, but also that had the potential to actually then enact change. Again, Tom mentioned it just now, Southampton hasn't suffered from lapse of strategies, I can tell you. I think the thing that perhaps one of the reasons that I've come down, been brought down, is to help move that into a delivery phase. And that's very much what we're going to be talking about as we move forward. I guess the other thing about the Renaissance board is that it's cross-party, so it is an apolitical body, and it's also seeking to put in place long-term commitments and aspirations, things that are going to survive the vagaries of whatever it might be, government change or whatever happens locally. So the point is around creating a long-term strategy underpinned by a long-term delivery approach as well. So that's it. And I wasn't saying much, but that wasn't really much, but anyway.
That's all right. And Tom, you were appointed, I think it was spring this year, to start taking forward the Renaissance master plan, and you've been working on that throughout the year. Can you let us know where we are now with the latest perspectives.
Yeah, again, I mean, we have got a few slides actually to contextualise, which should have probably referred to earlier, if I think that actually works. So I think that the main thing has been about gathering and trying to achieve consensus around the kind of the main stakeholders. And so, as we said, the master plan area, or the area of focus, has really been on the city centre and a little bit more beyond that. But obviously, it's seen as a catalyst, I think, for the city and the region. And I think the way that we have been looking to position this, and this has become clear through all our discussions, and again, some of the feedback this morning, is that it's all about positioning Southampton city centre as a city in its region, which I think is on the next slide, and just some of those huge opportunities that come here. So, you know, this really has got immense potential as a city. It's similar with a lot of people that we talk to who've worked in the sector, who might, you know, it's reminiscent of places like Liverpool, Manchester 20 years ago, just in terms of scale of the opportunity. And that vision that's coming from the Renaissance board is really important, that it isn't just a city council vision, it's a kind of a city vision which is brought into, will prevail in doing that. So we've looked at how the city acts within the context of the kind of the city boundaries, but obviously that goes way beyond. And I think the next slide, Gavin, is then how you really position this as part of the Central South and as part of the wider UK. And obviously the relationship, as we discussed earlier, between Bournemouth and Portsmouth, the great assets that come with the two national parks and the Isle of Wight national landscape and the Solent, you know, it's unsurpassed, I think, compared to many other parts of Europe. It's just not kind of quite meeting that potential. So what we've really been looking to is, in the first phase, and I think this is, you know, it's kind of it's pre-day one really where we are with the plan, is to just try and get that consensus among the main stakeholders. There then needs to be a lot more dialogue with the communities that live here, with the people who want to invest in the city, to really then move forward. And so I think the difference between the work we've been doing compared to, I guess, what my colleagues at EDA were doing 20 years ago is actually something which is probably less specific and less detailed, much more flexible, but really recognising the scale of the opportunity and everything that comes with it. So the council are effectively, and the stakeholders are effectively ready to seize opportunities, both from central government, but also from, you know, national and international investors as and when they come forward.
I think we're just looking at this plan, it's very clear that you see Southampton City in the region, in particular 3 port sites being shown, and the impact that could have on the city's future.
Just Gavin, I'm sorry to add as well that I think one of the things that I'm mindful of, as is Councillor Fieldcrow, Councillor Bogle and others, is that we will need to do more, and we want to do more about telling that story, that overlay with citizens and residents, to make sure that there is that genuine buy-in and understanding of what's happening, because I think people felt done unto too long in these sorts of spaces. So, you know, taking a different approach with that is something we're interested in as well.
And I think that's important. There's been sites and planning schemes that take 20 odd years to get through planning. Luckily, Southampton, Rock here might be an example, but other sites, that's the Tierney Key I mentioned earlier, have been delivered and things have moved forward. And I think we're reasonably to do now buy into those sites, but the difference here is actually by bringing those landowners into the conversations at the early stage, at the outset. They are the key parties that can help delivery, whether it's finance, whether it's funding, but probably more importantly, providing land and understanding what their needs are, can make something that can be delivered. It gives you the parameters to then go and talk to communities and then feed that all in. Tom, if you would describe key big interventions that you think you see coming out of this.
Yeah, so I think just if I can skip through a couple more just to point at stuff. Yeah, so we've developed a vision statement. This is what we want everyone to sign up to. This is kind of where we are at the moment with getting the stakeholders to align. But we've also kind of been looking at the spatial opportunities, which is on the next slide, probably the best one to talk to, and actually some of the thematics which link back to a business case, which we won't dwell on. But effectively, pretty much a lot of the master plan or the spatial plan for the city was almost drawn already when we started. because I think the huge swathes of opportunity in the area that we were referring to as West Bay, which is effectively the area of reclaimed land from the 30s, which is known as West Bay, the Mayflower waterfront, and indeed what's happening in the heart of the city, we're kind of starting to be developed. I think over this side, as Gavin, as you said, the opportunity exists in what happens around the stadium. So could this become, as many other cities are looking towards at the moment, a much more kind of cohesive sport and entertainment district? How can the whole city become a platform for kind of future events? So actually, because it is a relatively compact city, why couldn't we be building on the boat show, for example, and other kind of major events that could focus across here and the wider area? And then I think the other big thing is the sheer volume of commercial and residential development the city has potential for, which again needs a bit of refinement. But I mean, we were talking about new towns earlier. You've got the scale of development within the city centre that the government are looking for as part of a new town programme. So we see the city as something which is a bit more cohesive and programmed, and things like a new town development corporation would be very helpful in terms of actually helping to bring that convening power and the people around the table moving forward. So there's so much potential, but we don't want to kind of stray too far in terms of how those detailed proposals become forward. It's just really about being ready to seize the numerous opportunities which will no doubt come.
Brilliant, thank you, Tom. Stephen, I was going to ask how the City Council is going to set itself up to enable to deliver this change. Now, maybe it's too early for that, but I presume there are conversations throughout the council to make sure that all the various different departments are engaged in this process as well.
Yeah, Gavin, there are, but I think it's also important to be up front and say that Southampton, like a lot of other local authorities in the country, has faced and does face significant financial challenges, which is clearly an issue for us all. Though what I would say, in the last year, we've had Andrew Travers, one of the most respected chief executives in the sector, coming down, and with Councillor Filker, the organisation is in a fundamentally better place than it has been for a long time. The transformation is happening, and the grip that is sort of getting into place is a foundational and important aspect of how we move forward. For me, I'd love to be the guy that comes out to these sorts of things and just does the talking, but actually I've got a significant set of responsibilities within the council, my directorate, and again, what I'd say on that is that there are some brilliant people at Southampton across all the teams that I am very, very lucky enough to lead, but also more widely. So, but we need to augment that really by, if we're talking about this stuff and if we're talking about the need to deliver at pace and at scale, we need to be set up accordingly. So I'm doing some significant work internally about making sure that we have the balance in the right place in the services, capacity and the capabilities right. Because again, there's no point in me coming here and saying we're going to do all this and then we can't facilitate that internally. But I'd reiterate that our city development team, our planning service, transport team, our fantastic culture and tourism offer, some brilliant people, and it's just about supporting them and, as I say, just making sure the capacity's right. And then I guess finally, this is a bit of sort of digression, but it's really important that I'm here. I'm actually sort of physically in the city, so I'm here 3 or 4 days a week. I still live in South London, and I've got a couple of young kids with me half the time, so that's a juggle, but it's really important that I am visible, again, at these fantastic events, but also internally within the council, just sort of demonstrating how we're going to work together to move things forward.
Brilliant, thank you, Stephen. You mentioned the kind of financial stresses and everything, other than financial stress, there's also resource issues we understand as well, but so clearly the council aren't going to deliver all of this on their own, but clearly there are landlord interests and lots of people here who would be interested to get involved. So how do you see the private sector enabling or helping deliver what we have to do next?
Well, I've always been clear throughout my sort of career that things can't happen without partnership, particularly with the private sector and other sectors indeed. But for me, we work hand in glove. We need to, we should be. and I'm open for discussions, across the board, always have been, and will be. I think that I hold Fridays for meetings in London, and I'm pretty logged down at the moment with people wanting to talk Southampton, so whether that's pension funds or institutional investors or whatever it is. So I think the sector see this as a massive opportunity, and we'll do all we can to enable that. Of course, we are also a democratic organisation. It's really important we respect the role of the members within the city, and the fact that they're advocates for their residents as well. So it's that balance, but done properly, that balance works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's encouraging to hear that we're not just talking to the people locally and converting, but actually going out there and spreading the message, which I understand there's going to be a launch event next year where there'll be a lot more of that. So more about that later on, I'm sure. I think you mentioned also about political leaders, and clearly Southampton has kind of chopped and changed over the course of the 25 years that I've been in the city. I think what's refreshing is the fact the Relations Board does have representation from the main key members, main key parties as well. So again, hoping that there is some consistency in this and that it will move forward. Just getting into some of the detail, probably haven't got too much time left, but just interested to understand if there's any major changes to transport networks. We talked about transport earlier, and transport within cities, the kind of high-speed rapid transit and all those sorts of things, but are you looking at any change in the transport system?
So I think that's vital to being able to unlock the capacity in the city, and actually there already were a number of plans, as I think I mentioned earlier, that we've been building on. I mean, actually there's been some really successful work I think this year, funded by the Transforming Cities Fund. So I'm actually going down to Southampton University a couple of weeks ago. The works there already feel like the university is part of the city centre, which is incredible. And I think it's things like that need to happen, and it will be incremental. I think going back to what we're talking about is we can propose what we want in the city centre, and that kind of includes a lot more kind of car space given over to people and to new development, and to make it easier to walk and cycle. But actually, it comes back to that sub-regional scale of investment and coordination, which will actually be important in the transport system. So particularly thinking about things like how you can encourage park and ride, because it's not about making it hard to drive into the city centre in the next 5 years. It's about making it easy to go by other routes.
Yeah.
And so we need to make sure that things like park and ride will in the kind of the plan for mass transit, which again is still a key part of the Southampton strategy, as well as continuing making it better and easier to walk and cycle. So it's going to happen incrementally, and it needs to kind of plug in probably to a kind of a much bigger regional piece in the future, but absolutely critical to actually unlocking the capacity.
And just in terms, we heard earlier about the fact that house prices in Southampton are actually quite good value for kind of first-time buyers. Got huge numbers of students in the city, quite a lot of graduates each year, and trying to retain those rather than getting them to move. I think one of the key things for that is probably attracting more employers into the city. Stephen, is there work that the council are doing on that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So Stephen Cox, who was on the panels before, and Stantec do work at a sub-regional and city level for us at the moment in terms of really getting under the bonnet of future growth sectors and the evidence base and everything that's going to be coming through. So we're, again, we're talking about ingredients that we're bringing together to move this forward. Understanding where the city's going from a growth and employment perspective is critical, because we can then match those opportunities with provision. We're talking about students, it's absolutely right that we need to retain more graduates within the city. And if you look at other cities like Bristol, it's a 75-76% retention rate. Here is much lower. But what I also say is that it's not just university students, it's the FE sector, and it's about ensuring there are pathways in place for our young people in the city to enable them to achieve their aspirations as well. So yeah, there's a lot of work happening behind the scenes around that analysis piece, the work that will inform both this work but also everything else that we're trying to do, and working in partnership with schools, colleges and the HE sector.
And just one of the ideas that were being put forward at very early stages in the work we've been doing is the idea of an innovation district, which again has worked really successfully in other cities, so Manchester and Leeds in particular, because it's not a case as it used to be of perhaps creating speculative commercial office space to attract the occupiers. It's about growing the economy and building on the entrepreneurialism which actually exists here. So particularly that's where bringing the universities back into the city centre. You've actually got great innovation in the city in places like the hospital around life science connected to the university. You've got Chilwell Science Park, which is at capacity. So there must be some opportunities to bring some of that into the city centre, and to attract the people who want to work there, you need to have a very high quality living environment with all the kind of the good quality residential and cultural facilities that you'd expect.
I was at the Institute for Economic Development conference last week, and they were talking about innovation districts a lot. They were referring to it though as part of a quadruple helix, and I'm not sure where you sort of got that one, but anyway, the point being is that universities in city centres are increasingly important aspects of how places grow. And again, it's not just about the universities serving the needs of their students, which is important, but it's creating the ecosystem, like for lack of a better term, that supports other young people, and indeed older people re-entering the labour market, in terms of their aspirations.
Perfect. So I know there's been a lot of talk about all the various plans that have been mentioned today and how they all fit together. I think you can see there's a clear structure and chronology to those in terms of growth and prosperity plan and the Renaissance master plan to kind of almost feed in, and then understand the city plan, the local plan is going to be looked at next year, which obviously feeds out of those documents. So it does look as though it is all well thought through. So just one final, more fun question. Imagine in 20 years' time when you're living somewhere else, or you've gone away for a while, and friends visited Southampton, and they sent you a postcard back, whether or not there'll still be postcards in 20 years' time, I'm not sure. But they sent you a postcard back to Southampton. What would you be wanting them to be saying on that? Stephen, you want to go first?
Well, I hope to be living in Southampton in some sort of retirement community. I think you can put it 20 years. But I think a vibrant, exciting, buzzy place. That's the thing. It needs to have, an amazing waterfront that's memorable, a place that you can spend a lot of time and want to come back to and kind of get lost in. So that's going to be part of it. So as well as just amazing art and cultural facilities that attract tourists in. And again, one of the big things that we didn't really touch upon is actually the interface with the cruise port. That's going up to 4 million people potentially in the next 20 years. So if you can retain some of those 4 million people as tourists in the city centre, through hotels and hospitality and tourist attractions, then actually that's going to be a huge contribution to the local economy, and it will aid to that kind of vibrancy which could be much better in the city centre at the moment.
So I therefore with that, on this very, very long postcard that we're writing, I suppose I'd add a couple of things. One is that it's a place that celebrates and recognises its history, the richness of that history and the contribution the community has made to it. And also that the catalytic change that we would have seen in the city centre has benefited local people and has narrowed inequality gaps. And one final thing is that the Saints will be in the Champions League along with West Ham United. So that's what I'd like to see.
Excellent. Well, thank you both very much, and obviously we look forward to visiting in 20 years' time or living here in the Southampton complexes. I think the final thing I'd just say is Southampton City Council, Brown Partners, the Renaissance Board are all doing a huge amount of work. All the groups are doing a huge amount of work to put the seeds in place. I think it is down to all of us to actually take this on board and to deliver this. We all are in the business of delivering. The opportunities are here, so it is all up to you to go and talk to your clients, tell them about what the opportunities are in the city, in the region, bring them down here, introduce them to Stephen, and just get the money flowing into the city. Thank you.